Well, I'll tell you one thing from my city. They're pretty good at setting up signs, explaining to us about the history of the place. And I often show this housing project here, which is across the street from my building, which went up in 1967. And this explains how and why this housing project was begun in the 1950s in post-war France to find a solution to the housing problem. Now, this place here is actually my municipal health center, and a lot of people don't understand me when I say that I can see a psychologist there for free and get a lot of other good services there. It's not for free because I pay for them in taxes, but I don't actually exchange any money with them. Now, this is my street now, and this is what you can see. I hope you can find the connection. I see it because I live here. And this is my building on the left, which went up in 1967, and which is a private building. And this is the building right above me here, which is in the process of being emptied and torn down. And it's kind of funny to see the old French cars and stuff here. And there's actually a river which is under this street, which was, since the Dark Ages or before, the street that you took to get to Strasbourg in France. So this was the idealistic view of the cool apartments. And I know that these apartments look very dreary, and the building does not look beautiful from the outside. But in fact, my husband's family lived in a subsidized apartment like this in Le Bicêtre, on the other side of Paris for, many years, like 25 years or something. And it was actually a beautiful apartment with balconies on both sides and floor-to-ceiling windows, only 2 exposures. But it was quite a nice, reasonable place to live. God help you, however, if the elevator didn't run. So here are some old pictures of old features of my neighborhood, which is called Quartier Saint-Rémy. And there used to be a wall around Saint-Denis. Saint-Denis is an ancient fortified city. And this was a parish around where I live, just outside the wall. So it was kind of always only for the brave, I suspect. Now, here we can see what I consider to be quite an unrecognizable landscape. Little things like, the types of buildings, the styles of the buildings haven't really changed. And this explains how going back in the 30s, when communism really began here, all of this urban planning was set up. And this building here is actually Art Deco, and it's still there. It's part of a huge housing project which dates from the 30s, and it looks quite the same, It doesn't look like that bad of a place to live. I mean, all these decades later. And here you can see this open water here. Saint-Denis, it has 7 creeks and rivers going through it, as well as the River Seine, which is one of the reasons that this city developed as much as it did during the Dark Ages, and was actually the original capital of France before Paris. Alright. Let's see what we have over here. Oh yeah. Now, this is my public hospital. Unfortunately, I've had to stay there many times. But one of the biggest and first charity hospitals in the world, L'Hôtel Dieu, was here at what is now Napoleon's Legion of Honor. And it goes back to the Dark Ages. And you must understand that what these nuns and these clergy were doing was really brave, because there was nobody to care for the sick who didn't have money in the past. And you can visit the Museum of Saint-Denis and see a lot of the tools and the old apothecary and stuff that used to be there. And I don't know if you can really imagine it, but this was quite an unheard of marvel back in the day. I mean, you know, nobody did anything for the poor and the sick in the past, you know. They were just left outside, really, you know, to die horrible deaths. Or their families would, you know, just exclude them or whatever. And so the concept of the public good and of charity goes back quite a way and can be found here in my town. And if you find that, you know, you have a knee-jerk reaction against communists or socialists or whatever, I must confess I had the same reaction when I moved over here. But I got to know more about Saint-Denis, which is known as La Ville Rouge, the Red City, which is the birthplace of communism. And I learned more about the enormous sacrifices which were done by people to get what we take now for granted as basic human rights. Workers' rights, healthcare rights, you know, rights to housing, things like that. Community, society. So you might go ahead and say, well, I'm a capitalist, you know, let the markets fight it out, you know. But I think you have to remember that people gave their lives fighting for the dignity of humanity and the decency of humanity, and for a reasonable means of structure and socialism and social security to exist. So moving over here to Europe has been a real eye-opener for me, and perhaps you can see there are still those buildings there which were rehabbed a few years ago. I've seen photos of this neighborhood going back over the last 60, 70 years. It looks kind of the way it does now. It's kind of funny. You know, the center of town here, I guess, is more charming and more scenic. It's about 10 minutes away by foot. But, you know, this is the real Paris as far as I'm concerned. At least it is for me. I hope you've enjoyed the view.